To be welcoming into the studio via Skype, Doug Stevens, the retail prophet. He's behind me on the screen here, but want to introduce folks to Doug. So much going on in the retail world, as we know. Here in Rhode Island, Benny's, the big news, has been all the talk of the town. Finding out Toys R Us is closing, so much going on. Doug Stevens, one of the world's foremost retail industry futurists, his intellectual work and thinking have influenced many of the best-known retailers, from brands such as Walmart, Google, Home Depot, Disney, BMW, Coca-Cola, Intel, you name it. He is the author of 2 books, The Retail Revival, Reimagining Business for the New Age of Consumerism, and Re-Engineering Retail, the Future of Selling in a Post-Digital World. Doug, welcome to Go Local.
Thanks so much.
So tell us a little bit. You're the retail prophet. So you're supposed to tell us what we're going to be seeing here in the future. Did you predict Toys R Us closing?
Well, you know what? I mean, if I had, I certainly wouldn't have been the only one to predict that. I think that it's been very apparent for a long time that Toys R Us was not performing the way it needed to. This was complicated by a significant amount of debt that they took on under a private equity company. And so, you know, my opinion is that Toys R Us missed an important pivot. And you could look back, I think, as far as maybe 10 years to a point when it became very apparent that to just sell toys in the toy category, to just focus on product, was going to be very difficult because toys were becoming commodities. And not only that, but there was a generational change. You know, people were, the population of children in the U.S. was just not, simply wasn't what it used to be. And so my belief was that Toys R Us should have moved to delivering more experiences for kids. I mean, at the end of the day, whether Toys R Us sold toys or something else, what they really sold was fun and entertainment for children. Mm-hmm. And I think they could have pivoted into a number of different business models that would have allowed them to connect and be far more profitable in that market beyond just selling toys.
So talk with us a little bit about that. As we have talked prior to the show, we had the chain here, Benny's, a family-owned chain that had been around for decades, strictly brick and mortar, kind of focusing house goods, toys, you name it, you could go and buy it. Incredibly beloved, not online, not sort of moving into that sphere. Can stores and businesses, you know, can they have this sort of tandem brick and mortar and online? Or talk to us about the complexities. It's probably not as simple as that.
So I think and I agree with you. I mean, I think what you just said is absolutely true. It's not as simple as that. I mean, a lot of people are pointing to the internet now and companies like Amazon and eBay as being the villains in the downfall of retail. And as much as that makes for really good headlines, unfortunately, it's not perfectly true. Because even when you look at the fact that, yes, Amazon is a dominant force in e-commerce, but e-commerce is still only in the US maybe 11% of total retail sales. So there's still enough retail to go around. And certainly for incumbent companies and legacy companies, there's enough to survive. I think one of the problems is that we've come out of a period of time in North America where we had enormous population growth from, you know, the 1940s onward. We had enormous economic growth. I mean, just between 1980 and 2004, the economy in North America doubled in size. And so as a consequence of that, a lot of retailers were along for the ride. I mean, they weren't necessarily outstanding retailers, but guess what? You didn't have to be. You didn't have to be a tremendous business in order to survive. But now a lot of those factors have gone away. Population isn't growing the way it used to. It's a far more diverse population. The economy has slowed down. Technology is certainly impacting the way consumers shop. And so as a consequence, you do now have to be truly remarkable in order to stand out. And a lot of retailers, as much as we may love them, they simply aren't. They simply aren't that remarkable, and they fall somewhere in the middle of the value spectrum. But then when you couple that with technology and the fact that, yes, we are buying more and more things online all the time, if you're a retailer that isn't prepared to be online and serve customers where they want to be served, then you're going to have increasing troubles, for sure.
And talk with us, one of the things we have here in Providence, Doug, we have the Providence Place Mall. It's a big building here, kind of one of the focal points in downtown. We've seen a number of establishments leave the mall. We have seen a growth in one of the adjoining communities, Cranston, one of the larger cities in Rhode Island, called Garden City. It's outside, there's parking, we have seen a growth there. What's the future of the shopping mall?
Yeah, good question. And I mean, the interesting thing is that two things really about the shopping mall that I find fascinating. One is that the shopping mall used to be the place where we started our journey. You know, I mean, 20, 25 years ago, if you didn't know exactly what you wanted, well, that was your first step. You went to the shopping center because there were more brands there than anywhere else. There was certainly a wider selection of products, and oftentimes you even went to the department store first within the shopping center because they had the widest assortment. But now, increasingly, the starting place for a shopping journey is the internet. Right? That is the biggest big box of them all. So increasingly, consumers are using Amazon as being their first point to turn to when they're not sure of what they want. So that's the one thing that the shopping mall is suffering from, is that it is no longer the starting point of the journey. But the other thing that has really impacted the shopping mall is that it is no longer the place to hang out either. You know, when I was a kid, which is, you know, in the medieval times, you used to go to the mall just to hang out. That was what you did. You know, it was as much a place of community and a social venue as it was a place of commerce. And now, of course, you know, again, increasingly we're hanging out online. So those two things in combination have really impacted the shopping center.
And speaking of shopping experiences, and you just obviously touched upon Amazon, a lot of talk about Amazon's role with Whole Foods as being sort of the tip of the iceberg, and sort of folks aren't quite sure what to expect. We've seen, you know, the Echo being sold in brick and mortar Whole Foods, but how big of a game changer is this, and where do we see sort of Amazon sort of getting its tentacles in next?
So it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, Amazon, you know, the company that sort of defined digital retail, now moving out into the physical world and acquiring physical retailers. There was a lot of speculation around why is Amazon doing this? You know, why would Amazon buy Whole Foods? My personal take on it was that it wasn't as clear or as linear as it might seem in terms of strategy. My belief is that there were two principal reasons why Amazon was intrigued with Whole Foods and why they're intrigued with the grocery category to begin with. The first is that there's very few categories of goods that we shop for as often as consumers as we do for groceries. There are some statistics that say that the average consumer goes to the grocery store about 1.7 times a week on average. So that's a pretty significant number of times to go shopping for the same sort of item. So the consequence of that is that there's a tremendous amount of data. You know, you think about what the average basket of goods might hold in a grocery store and what those goods say about us. You know, if I'm going and I'm buying a lot of low-fat, low-sodium, gluten-free, organic, natural food, well, what does that say about me? And if I'm Amazon, what other products all of a sudden does that sort of index to that I could say, oh, okay, well, here's a consumer that we could market fitness equipment to, or here's a consumer that we could market, you know, Fitbits to, because it's very clear that, you know, health is important to them and fitness is important to them. So I really look at the first primary reason why Amazon is interested in Whole Foods as being a data play. I think that they want to get their hands on all of that data and begin to use it to become more predictive in their recommendations. The second point, though, is that one of the real pain points right now for Amazon is the cost of delivering things directly to somebody's door. Mm-hmm. And so with Whole Foods, all of a sudden now, they have 460 mini depots around the country that arguably are in close proximity to their Amazon Prime customers already. And these now can serve as places where consumers can go and pick up their order instead of having Amazon necessarily deliver it. And it also gives them a place to consolidate orders. So I really look at this as being a distribution and data play first. You know, if they manage to sell a lot of groceries at the same time, I think Amazon would look at that as a bonus.
Just an added win. And of course, one of the things that we're talking about here in Rhode Island and all across North America, HQ2. There's a speculation that Amazon might already know where they're looking to put the second headquarters, if you will. What's your thoughts? Where do you see it ultimately, if you were a prophet, thinking as to where possibly it could end up?
Well, I mean, I think that Amazon right now, I'm sure that they must feel a degree of isolation being in Seattle, and that could be a good thing. But from a business standpoint, that can also take its toll. So I think that they're definitely going to want exposure. If I was going to bet on it, I would bet that they're definitely going to be looking at the East Coast of the United States. I certainly think that New England, Rhode Island, possibly New York or Connecticut, I mean, states like that make a lot of sense. There has been some talk as well, though, that potentially a city like Toronto in Canada could also give them a larger footprint in the Canadian market. It would certainly expose them in a greater way to that market, and it would still be quite central to the rest of the United States as well.
Well, it's interesting. We've been talking with leaders here about what they think Rhode Island could possibly do to make a play for it. That's going to be something we're going to be focusing here at Go Local. But I did touch upon the Providence Place Mall. It does have Nordstrom as an anchor. One of the big things that we've seen in retail news in the past week or so is Nordstrom's proposal for a Nordstrom Local, a different shopping experience, a smaller one where the clothes aren't actually there. Is this a trend that we're going to see more of? And what was your reaction when you saw this coming from Nordstrom?
So I've been talking for a long time about the idea that my belief is that what we're witnessing as consumers and as retailers in the marketplace now is a phenomenon whereby media, in all of its various forms and formats, is essentially becoming the store. We used to go to stores because they had great selections of products, they provided product information, and they could facilitate purchases. Well, that's why I go online now, right? Because there's enormous selections of products, there's awesome product information and media about those products, and what could possibly be easier than buying something with one click? So in essence, media is becoming the store. But the interesting thing is that on the other side of the coin, stores are becoming media. And I think retailers are starting to attune to the idea that their store, their physical store, can actually be a very, very powerful form of experiential media. And so when I look at this installation by Nordstrom, that's exactly what I see. This is not about tons and tons of merchandise on the floor. As you point out, they're not going to have merchandise on the floor. They're going to have a nail salon, a cafe, a bar. They're going to have tailors. They're going to have stylists. And you're going to go there so that you have an awesome Nordstrom experience. And that's going to turn you on as a consumer, and it's going to make you want to buy more stuff from Nordstrom, be it online or offline. So yeah, I really see them now using this smaller footprint, this 3,000 square foot store, as an effective form of media.
I've always wondered about the role that alcohol, socialization plays and purchasing. We've seen it a lot of times, jewelry parties, the type of coming up from where the Tupperware trends had been in the 50s to where people are buying, when they're at home. What have you seen in terms of people deciding to buy at home versus when they go to a store? If they're home, if it's late at night and they've maybe had a glass of wine or two, are they just naturally buying more because it's right there at their fingertips?
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is that it's funny because alcohol, in fact, gives you exactly the same chemical reaction in your brain as a great shopping experience does. The two go sort of hand in hand. You get dopamine rushing to your brain when you have an awesome shopping experience or when you have a couple of glasses of wine. So it's the same physiological effect. And interestingly, we sort of look at this as being a new phenomenon, this idea of going to the store and having a glass of wine while you shop, or going to the store having a beer while you get your tailoring done. But this is an old thing in Europe and in parts of Asia. I mean, if you go to Turkey and you want to go in and buy a Turkish rug, the first thing they'll do is offer you a liqueur or a drink while you shop. So it's it's not that untraditional. It's certainly not that unconventional.
Maybe just the puritanical nature of America is finally catching up, possibly with the rest of the world. So as we're here in September, I know that we are coming close to time with you and where you have to go. I mean, I don't want to put you on that profit hot seat of what we're going to see next, but what will we see before the end of the year as potential sort of big announcement? What should people look for in the world of retail?
Well, I think we're coming into what many retailers would consider to be kind of the pivotal corner, in the market, or the golden quarter, as Walmart calls it. This is the time of year now where I think that certain retailers are either going to have to make it or break it.
Okay.
And I personally think we're going to see a tremendous amount more fallout in the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Estimates are, if we went back to 2012, the estimates in 2012 were that the United States was about anywhere from 25% to 40% over-retailed. So when you start to do the math of that, yeah, we've seen some fallout in the retail market, but I think we're bound to see a lot more. And I think we're going to see Amazon become even stronger. And you mentioned before, what's next for Amazon? It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Amazon go out and buy a furniture retailer. I know that furniture is a market that they desperately want into.
Okay.
It's a very high margin market, and I could see them buying somebody like a Restoration Hardware.
Very interesting, Doug. I so appreciate taking the time today for you to Skype into us, give us a little bit of your retail expertise, as we've seen so many changes and shakeups here, right in Rhode Island and the rest of the country. So, Doug Stevens, appreciate your Skyping in today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Doug Stevens, the Retail Prophet.